Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to part two of my discussion on poverty. And we'll talk a little bit about poverty first, and we'll talk about welfare after that. Now, I talked about being homeless, but in my last video, but that was something that happened when I was 6 and 7 years old. It had nothing to do with me. It was my parents' circumstances and not my own. But in my adult life, I mentioned previously that people talk about the poor and the homeless like someone who's never been hungry before. Um, and you may not think to look at me, but I've been hungry. And when I say hungry, I don't mean ready for dinner. I don't mean maybe you worked through lunch. I mean like you haven't eaten in 4 days. Um, when I was 19, young man living in the big city on my own, I broke my ankle very badly. Badly to the point where they talk about doing surgery and putting pins in it. Badly. I did not have an office job. I was a laborer, like most 19-year-olds are, and I was on crutches with a cast from my toes to my hip. Obviously, I couldn't be on my feet all day. So I had to survive off my savings, which didn't last more than a month. And at one point, you have to decide whether or not you're going to be thrown out on the street in the middle of a May and winter in February, where it snows every week, or eating. I chose keeping a roof over my head and not eating. Now, obviously, I didn't starve to death. Obviously, I did occasionally scrounge up food. But yeah, I would go 4 or 5 days without eating anything. I starved off 50 pounds in 2 months because I didn't eat, or I ate very, very little. I basically ended up to stay alive. And because of that, I have a very hard time being hungry psychologically. I have a real hard time when my stomach is growling to not eat. I have a hard time stopping eating when I'm full. I've mentioned being a glutton and that I enjoy being a glutton, and I do, but psychologically, that does something to you. Being that hungry for that long, being so hungry that an image of food will stop you in your tracks, literally freeze you in place, and you just stand there locked on that image. Being that hungry for a couple of months will do something to you. I have a real hard time controlling my appetite, controlling what I eat because of that. So that's my discussions on poverty. I am very fortunate it didn't last for very long. I am very fortunate I did not get thrown out in the street. I could have become homeless in a May and winter. Um, I didn't know anything about welfare or unemployment, and even if I did, I would have had to get there. You couldn't just call up and apply. You had to show up. I was on crutches, and it literally snowed every week that winter. As soon as before the sidewalks were even clear enough for me to actually think about walking on them in crutches, it snowed again. I was housebound for about 6 weeks before I could get out of the house to even try to do anything like, get help. I did have to borrow money to pay the rent eventually. Once my cast came off, once I had a walking cast on, I did go back to work, but I was out of work for 4 months, 3 of those which I had no money, 3 of which I spent every penny I could scrape up on rent. I fed myself on $12.50. That was my food budget once my food ran out. I'm not talking about ramen. I'm talking about, you could buy a 3-pound bag of popcorn for 99 cents, which you could those days, the cheap crap. But that'll last you a while. There's no nutrition there. But if you ration it out, you can make it last a long time. It's cheaper than ramen. Ramen was luxury. But having said that, I do want to talk about welfare and the people who speak contemptuously of welfare. In order to do that, I need to talk about the history of welfare, or at least up to a certain point. Welfare was created in the 1930s as a response to the Depression, mostly as a widows and orphans fund, but it was expanded eventually. It was also created and passed with strong bipartisan support. Both liberals and conservatives completely supported welfare down the line. And not just for a short period of time. They supported it for 30 years. For 3 decades, conservatives who currently have been trying to gut the program, they supported it wholeheartedly for 3 decades. What changed? 1964, Summer Freedom, Civil Rights Movement, Civil Rights Act was passed. When the Civil Rights Act was passed and Black people started getting or applying for welfare benefits and getting them, the message from conservatives changed. When that happened, when Black people started getting welfare, conservatives pivoted to saying that giving people money would make them lazy, would make them dependent, that people who go after welfare are useless, lazy pieces of garbage who don't contribute to society. That message came from racism. So when I hear someone say welfare should not exist, that these people are just lazy, that it makes them depend on the system, all I hear are racist dog whistles. Now I hear you sputtering, blah, 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 blah. I'm not racist. I didn't call you racist. But that's a racist message. That message originated with racism. And when you repeat that message, you are repeating a racist message. You are spreading racist ideology, a message born of racist ideology. And I know I'm not going to change anyone's mind on this. I know people who are fond of that message are going to twist themselves into pretzel logic to deny that it has any basis. They're going to come up with all kinds of facts and figures that they can find about how racist, how people are, how the system is massively fraudulent. But the thing is, that research didn't exist in 1964. The reason that welfare isn't a problem is because conservatives have been gutting the program and making it inefficient, making it susceptible to fraud to justify their actions. So, racist dog whistles. Good hunting.